So, step one, let the computer compute. So, my mantra has always been sort of work smarter, not harder. And if you ever find yourself thinking, God, there must be a better way of doing this, invariably somebody has thought of that too, and either fixed the problem through a plugin or a script, or a work around, or just a combination of factors that can just make that process much simpler. Yeah, so don't be a slave to the machine, let it work for you, make it be your slave. So what does that mean? Well, there's a few kind of simple practical things, and this is where we are sort of starting today, and this is what I mean about starting simply. Just to backtrack slightly, so the sort of format for today is that I'm going to kind of introduce some sections, and then there'll be 3 kind of exercises that we do throughout the first part. Then we'll break for 20 minutes. And then in the second third, really, it's not really half. In the second third, I'll show you how to work with InDesign books and multiple InDesign documents to help you structure a system that can be a very kind of quick and productive and efficient way of creating bespoke versions of your portfolio, be it for clients or be it for presentations. So the purpose of using the book system, as the name implies, is it's designed to be used by teams. So if there's a group of people working on a single publication that might have 10 or 15 chapters, the book structure is a way of organizing all those individual InDesign files in a way that is then manageable. They can be connected, or you can work with them individually. That would all make sense a bit later on. But let's kick in with let the computer compute. So starting at the beginning, preferences. So there's lots of little tricks that you can kind of do as part of your day-to-day that just mean that you're not having to constantly put in numbers and type and shift between the mouse. And one of the things that I use a lot is modifying the units in preferences. So in preferences, and I'm on a PC, so it's under edit and preferences, but on a Mac it's file. So preferences here, you have this fantastic little nugget called units and increments. So that's kind of where you invariably kind of modify whether you're pixels, millimeters, etc. But this is the kind of nugget here. So you've got the cursor key, and you can control what that distance is. So if I've designed a grid for a book and I know my gutters are 5 millimeters, I can make sure that I can set my gutter, I can set my cursor key to the equivalent. So if I'm then working on a book and I want my captions to match the distance of my gutters and be 5 millimeters, I know that if those two are from, when I butt them up together and I just move the cursor key down once, it's moved 5 millimeters. I'm not having to measure anything. And that's a sort of simple task, but you can kind of scale that up across all sorts of different ways of aligning information and going through systematically on a book and wanting to make sure all your captions are equidistant. Then that is one way of doing it. I'll show you another way when we get into style sheet. So that's great, but then if you hold shift down, it's a multiplier of 10. So it always kind of multiplies by 10. So if I want to move something onto the pasteboard and move it back very quickly, by just holding shift, I can move it out and move it back. Maybe there's something underneath that I want to modify. I can move it back and I'm not having to measure it. I know it's exactly in the same place as where I started. So shift is incredibly powerful. Let me just go back to hiding my guide. So that principle of shift being a multiplier of 10 works in other areas around the interface. One thing that I always find very useful is, let me make it my custom black. So here, we've got our units. We have it within decimal points. So sometimes you just want to sort of round things up or down. The arrows up and down here will do that and round up and down from the decimal point. But if I hold shift, then it goes in increments of 10, basically. So 67 will round up to 70, and go 80, 90. So, you know, I don't have to kind of type or anything. I can just do that very, very quickly. The scroll wheel, this is just an aside really, the scroll wheel is also really, really useful. If you're working on a laptop and you don't have a mouse with a scroll wheel, I suggest you invest in one because it can really speed up lots of elements within the interface. So for example, here, if I've got a line weight and I want to increase it, I don't have to click on anything. I can just scroll up, and you would have seen now I missed the the size, but I can also scroll between the styling. So again, I'm not having to sort of delve into menus. I can just scroll and it will change the value of things. So that can be really, really helpful. Going back to the fields, if I come here and let me draw a big graphic just to demonstrate the point. So, you know, if I've got a big hoarding, for example, and the printer's saying, can you split it into 7 sections? I don't want to have to kind of measure it and do the maths myself. I can just do it here. So if I've got an artwork file that is the full width, a field, most fields across computers, not necessarily just InDesign, are little calculators in themselves. So if I do a /7, / being divide in kind of coding terms, and multiplying being asterisk, it will just divide that by a 7, and I don't have to sort of know what the number is particularly. If I then want to kind of set that out, equidistant, we've got our step and repeat somewhere. I can't remember where it is. Here it is, step and repeat. So here now I've just copied and pasted that number, and I can just paste it in, and I know that it's absolutely bang on. I've not moved anything. It's just using the maths within the system to kind of do the organizing for me. So it's just more to illustrate the point that fields are kind of calculators, really. So rounding up and rounding down, I just demonstrated using these arrows, and that kind of works across the board, so you can see them everywhere. So, you know, if you scaled a piece of text and you want to round it up to a round number, then you would do that on the text field there. So wherever those arrows are, it's effectively rounding up and down. Rulers and origin. So top left of the page, you've got your origin, so you can drag that out and make the origin start at the bottom of the page should you wish to measure up from there or at any point. So you've got control over where your rulers start and end. If you ever want to just reset it, just double click it, that's fine. Offsetting content, I demonstrated in terms of the caption block using the preferences and just nudging down. Alignment, we all know, you know, it's sort of very powerful, but there's a few sort of advanced uses which almost sort of do 2 actions at once. So we know that we can kind of align to the bottom, align to the top, center, etc. But when we actually open the alignment box itself, we've got a whole other host of options. So here, for example, if I want to make sure I've got a series of images that are all butted up together, I can select them all. They can all be different sizes. In this case, I've just got them all the same size. Let me make some variations just to prove the point. But if I have use spacing selected here and put that to 0, and then click that tool, it butts everything up again. And again, there's no overlap, there's no issue. Everything is super clean, super accurate. Again, I can kind of align to the bottom. But maybe it's a series of logos and I want them all to be 7.2 millimeters apart. Just because I can. So using spacing but putting a defined figure and clicking on that now has done that. So in a similar way, you can do it horizontally and vertically. You can't do it across the grid. You have to do it in 2 steps, should you want to do it across 2 steps. But we are sort of aligning, actually, we're aligning to the margin at the moment. I should have left it on selection. So selection means that whatever I've got, it will do it based on the bounds of that selection. But for example, if I want to do it aligned to the page, if I now do that, that's not what I want. I've got those 2 selected, and the reason it's doing that is because I've got it set as a right-hand page. I think. Let me just see. Oh, sorry, I've done the wrong thing. That's one. So if I've got that selected and it's there, and I just want to very quickly make sure it's absolutely in the middle of the page. Again, just a few clicks, and that aligns it to the middle of the page. We've got a few other options there. So if you've got your margin set up here and you want to align to your margin, you've got that as well. So these are the kind of elements that you can kind of, once you get the hang of, you can work with very, very quickly. Another just super useful thing is if you've got, a single document per project, you've got your research in there, you've got your evaluations, your sketches. It's just a repository for all of your information and your design development. But then at the end of it, you just want to extract certain sections into a PDF. Then again, not necessarily everybody knows it, but it's a sort of basic thing, is that you can work with your numbers here and just output certain page ranges. So 1, 2, 3 to 7 to 19 to 23. And it will span wherever I put a hyphen and then just combine all those into a single document. So it just means that you're not having to have 2 or 3 versions of a document. You can just sort of add into it, but then just manage your pages at the end. You might do a bit of a spring clean and then just put all the pages that you want to output in a single PDF at the end. So you just always know that from page 52, you can just export that section. So first exercise is just really to make use of today. We don't really give ourselves necessarily the time to just play around and have a play with some of the functionality of an application. So that's kind of what we've got some time to do today. So I'm just going to give you 5-10 minutes to have a play around with those elements, just to familiarize yourself with them.